The rain was relentless that night, pouring from the heavens in heavy sheets that blurred the world into shadows and streaks of silver. Clara, a 29-year-old single mother, tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her old, rattling car as it shuddered against every gust of wind. The wipers squeaked in a tired rhythm, barely keeping the windshield clear. Her shift at the diner had ended late, and all she could think about was picking up her little daughter, Lily, from the neighbor's apartment and collapsing into bed for a few precious hours before the cycle began again tomorrow. Clara's life was a continuous race she never seemed to win. 2 jobs, endless bills, and the gnawing fear of not being enough, for Lily, for herself. Her ex-husband had left 2 years ago, and since then, she'd learned to rely on no one but herself. Her heart ached from loneliness, but there was no room in her life for dreams or romance. Survival was all that mattered. As she slowed at a red light on a nearly deserted street, a figure stumbled out of the shadows. At first, Clara thought it was her exhausted eyes playing tricks on her. But then, through the curtain of rain, she saw a tall man weaving unsteadily, drenched from head to toe. Before she could react, he tripped over the curb and crumpled onto the soaked pavement. Clara's pulse quickened. It was late, the streets were empty, and she had Lily to think about. Stopping for a stranger could be dangerous. She hesitated, biting her lip, watching the man struggle weakly to push himself up. Then, something inside her shifted. She couldn't just leave someone lying there helpless in the cold, pouring rain. Pulling her car to the side, she jumped out and hurried over. Sir, are you okay? She shouted over the pounding rain. The man groaned, turning his face toward her. His speech was slurred, and the smell of alcohol hit her instantly. Can't find my car, he mumbled, shivering violently. Clara's heart softened despite her fear. He was clearly drunk and completely vulnerable. All right, come on, she said, crouching down to help him. I'll drive you home. Where do you live? With some effort, she got him into her car. As she drove through the storm, he muttered incoherent fragments about meetings and mistakes, even mentioning that he was a CEO. Clara almost scoffed at the idea. This man, a powerful CEO. When she finally pulled up to a towering luxury apartment building, Clara's breath caught. Maybe he wasn't lying after all. Helping him to his door, she turned to leave, but not before he grasped her wrist weakly and whispered, "Thank you." Clara slipped away silently, never imagining how much that night would change her life. The following morning began like any other for Clara. Too early, too rushed, and too heavy with responsibility. She groggily dragged herself out of bed after only a few hours of sleep, her back aching from the previous night's double shift. Lily, still half asleep, sat at the small, wobbly kitchen table, swinging her legs while nibbling on toast. Clara tied her daughter's hair into 2 messy pigtails and whispered, "Big day today, sweetheart. Be good for Mrs. Jenkins after school, okay?" Lily nodded, her wide brown eyes full of trust. Clara's heart ached. She hated leaving her little girl so often, but working 2 jobs was the only way to keep a roof over their heads. After rushing Lily to school and clocking in at the diner, Clara threw herself into the whirlwind of orders, spills, and endless coffee refills. The morning passed in a blur until, just before noon, a hush fell over the usually noisy diner. Clara glanced up and froze. A sleek black luxury car had just pulled up outside, gleaming even under the gray, rainy sky. Moments later, the door swung open and Ethan Carter, the very man she had rescued the night before, stepped inside. Clara's breath caught. Gone was the disheveled, drunken stranger from the rain. In his place stood a tall, striking man in a perfectly tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, his posture confident and commanding. He looked completely out of place in the small, worn-down diner. Ethan scanned the room, then his gaze landed on Clara. His lips curved into a small, almost sheepish smile as he walked straight toward her. "You," he said warmly, his deep voice carrying over the quiet murmur of the other customers. "I was hoping I'd find you." Clara blinked, utterly flustered. Me. Yes." He stopped in front of her, his eyes softening. I don't remember everything about last night, but I do remember you saving me. I owe you more than I can express. What's your name? Clara, she replied hesitantly, clutching her order pad like a shield. And really, it was nothing. You don't owe me anything. But Ethan shook his head firmly. No, you didn't just help me. You treated me like a human being when most people would have left me in the street. I'd like to repay you. Before Clara could refuse, another waitress called for help, forcing Clara to leave Ethan momentarily. From that day on, Ethan began stopping by the diner. At first, it was just for coffee and small talk. Then, little by little, he started asking about Lily, bringing Clara lunch on her breaks, and leaving generous tips. Clara tried to keep her guard up, reminding herself that men like Ethan lived in a different world. But with each visit, Ethan's kindness felt less like a debt and more like something genuine, a quiet bond forming between two people from completely different lives. Weeks turned into months, and what started as a few casual visits to the diner slowly became a ritual for Ethan. Every evening, just as Clara's shift was ending, he would appear, sometimes with takeout so she wouldn't have to cook after her long day, sometimes with a small gift for Lily, like a new book or a stuffed animal. Clara was cautious at first, worried that his kindness came with strings attached. But Ethan never asked for anything in return. For the first time in years, Clara felt someone truly saw her, not just as a tired waitress or a struggling single mom, but as a woman with dreams and feelings. Lily quickly grew attached to Ethan, racing to the door whenever she heard his knock, giggling as he scooped her up and spun her around. Clara couldn't help but notice how Ethan himself began to change. When she first met him, he was broken in ways he didn't even recognize, a man drowning in work and numbing himself with alcohol and shallow parties. Now, he was different. He cut back on drinking, started leaving work earlier, and even took days off, something his assistant told Clara was unheard of. One rainy afternoon, Clara returned home late from work to find Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor with Lily, both of them surrounded by crayons and coloring books. The sight warmed her heart in a way she couldn't explain. Later that evening, while Lily slept, Clara finally asked the question that had been haunting her. Ethan, why are you doing this? She said softly, her voice trembling. You're a CEO. You have an empire to run. You could be anywhere, with anyone, and yet you're here, with us. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, his eyes filled with vulnerability. Because this, he said, gesturing around the small, cozy apartment, feels like home. Clara, I spent years chasing success, thinking money and power would fill the emptiness inside me. But the truth is, every night I came back to an empty penthouse and drank myself to sleep. He took her hand gently. Then you showed up, Clara. You saved me that night. Not just from the rain, but from myself. And now, my habit isn't drinking or working late. It's this. Coming here. Being with you and Lily. Clara's eyes filled with tears. For so long, she had believed no one would ever choose her or her daughter. Yet here was a man who showed up, day after day, proving his love not through words, but through his consistent care. And slowly, she began to believe she deserved it. The night of the company's annual gala arrived, and Clara stood in front of the small, cracked mirror in her bedroom, feeling like she didn't belong in her own reflection. Ethan had insisted on buying her a dress for the evening, a simple yet elegant navy blue gown that fit her perfectly. Clara rarely dressed up. Most of her clothes were practical and worn from years of use. As she smoothed the fabric nervously, Lily clapped her hands in delight. Mommy, you look like a princess. Lily squealed, twirling around in the little white dress Ethan had given her. Clara smiled through her nerves and hugged her daughter tightly. As long as you're my little princess, that's all that matters. When Ethan arrived to pick them up, he stood frozen for a moment, completely mesmerized. You look incredible, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Clara blushed, her heart pounding. She wasn't used to being seen like this, valued, cherished. The gala was held at a glittering hotel ballroom filled with chandeliers, music, and the city's most powerful people. Clara felt out of place among the polished crowd, her insecurities gnawing at her. But Ethan stayed by her side, never letting go of her hand. He introduced her to his colleagues, proudly saying, "This is Clara, the woman who saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving." The evening was magical, but Clara couldn't shake the lingering fear that she didn't belong in Ethan's world. After the event, Ethan drove them to a quiet park overlooking the city. The night air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Under the soft glow of street lamps, Ethan turned to Clara with a seriousness she hadn't seen before. "Clara," he began, taking both her hands in his. "The night you found me in the rain, I was lost. I had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. You didn't just drive me home, you gave me a reason to live differently." Then he knelt down in front of Lily first, his voice tender. "Sweetheart, may I be part of your family? I promise to take care of you and your mom forever." Lily giggled and hugged him tightly. "Yes," she squealed. Clara's tears spilled freely as Ethan rose to his feet and faced her. "And Clara," he said, his voice breaking, "may I build a life with you, filled with love instead of loneliness?" Overwhelmed, Clara nodded through her tears. "Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes." In that moment, Clara realized that one act of kindness had not only saved Ethan's life but had built a new one for all three of them. A life rooted in love, trust, and the habit of showing up for each other.